Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome back to another video. Today, well, tonight actually, I have a first impressions for you. And this is part of the batch that one of my good friends in FragCom sent me a couple samples. And in them were Jil Sander Man II, which came out in 1983, and Jil Sander Woman II, which also came out in 1983. And the woman scent absolutely blew me away. I haven't had a chance to give it a full wear. I've just been kind of wearing it to bed. But this is the kind of scent that a younger me, let's say, a less experienced me. I don't want to sound all bougie and high up on my mountain like I have some sort of, secret to this or anything. But let's just say that somebody who was more influenced by, marketing and who should wear what never would have given this perfume a chance in the old days. It's actually called Woman II. And it's a floral animalic scent is basically what it is. That smells like an animalic shifra, which is one of my favorite categories of scent. So I'm just going to do a spray, and if you've watched some of my other videos, you know that during the day I basically wear my fragrances on the top of my hands and in the inside of my collarbones, and at night to test fragrances, I have these blotters. I actually bought some pretty expensive blotters that came from Grasse, France, that are really supposed to be the best blotters you can test perfume on. But I still don't really like using paper because your skin is what really brings out the scent the best. And I have had situations where I have tested something on a blotter and thought, it's not that great, or I've given it a pass or whatever it may be, only to try it on my skin and think, what was I thinking? The blotter misrepresents things sometimes. Or you'll try it on the blotter, think you absolutely love it, and it's the best thing you've ever smelled, and then you get it home and you try it on yourself, and it's, thumbs down. So this scent, 1983. So again, when I'm doing these first impressions, keep in mind a couple things. That it is literally a first impression, although with this I have smelled it before. I've worn it to bed a couple times at night like this, so I've had a chance to kind of smell it. It's not a true first spray and first impression, but I haven't really given it a full wear yet, so just keep that in mind. These are still, I would still consider these first impressions. But let me talk to you about the scent a little bit. If you're interested in learning about the house of Jil Sander, amazing house. They put out some absolute bangers between the years of the late 70s and, let's say, the mid 90s. Go watch my previous video that I did on Man 2. This was my scent of the day, and I said that it kind of opened up, reminding me a bit of Trousseau d'Uomo, but in this Chifra leather style that brought in this Je suis un homme by Eldo's, kind of like this oily leather. But then in the dry down, as I've worn it all day, I did that video about 4 hours in to wearing it, 4 to 5 hours in. In the late dry down, it picks up this powdery element, Man 2 does, that reminds me a little bit of Chaps. I have a Warner and a Cosmere version of Ralph Lauren's Chaps, which was also a Chifra fragrance that goes very powdery on me, and I get some of that from this. So as you wear perfume and as they develop, sometimes you'll kind of think of different things. So I don't want to say this smells like this or this smells like that constantly. But for something like this where I don't have very much experience, unfortunately, that's the best way that I can kind of portray an idea to you. But let's do the notes. I don't know who the perfumer is. If anyone knows who the perfumer is, I would love to hear to hear who made this, because this is an amazing creation. The 80s are just my favorite decade of fragrance, I think, hands down. I love so many 1980s, or even the late 70s that kind of blends into the 80s for me. It's just perfect. Let me show you a couple scents that's in the ballpark. And you shouldn't be surprised. One comes before this and one comes after, okay? So the one before is this. Now, this is an Oriental, not a Shifra, but the ambers in this, the amber in Woman 2 will remind you of opium. It'll give you a little bit of an opium vibe because of the way that the amber is constructed. However, the florals in this Woman 2, Jil Sander Woman 2, are amped up. And the florals are very beautifully done. If you are, somebody who doesn't like floral fragrances, you should still test this because this perfume has so many facets. It's multifaceted and it's multidimensional and it's multi-layered, if you will. There's different parts. You get different pieces at different times. I tried to stay up as long as possible last night wearing this to try to pay attention to how it develops on my skin. But what it does is it opens up with this classic floral Shifra. So you get this citrusy top, and you get this floral heart, classic floral Shifra, and then you get this labdanum, and you get this oak moss, and you get this civet in the base. You know, the 80s fragrances were, they used civet to absolute perfection. And I'll show you another fragrance that came after this that used civet to absolute perfection. It's this. And this is one of the best finds. Tetra alla Scala completely blew my mind. This is literally one of the best finds of last year for me. The other one was Venezia. Two women's perfumes were the best finds of the year for me. And that's the thing. That's going to be the thing about my channel that, you will probably come to learn if you follow me long term, is that I'm going to go everywhere. I'm going to go wherever my journey takes me. If you're only into niche and you see a vintage hard to get, discontinued, this has probably been discontinued for 20 years, discontinued designer perfume, you might turn up your nose at it if you think you only want to hear about Xerjoff, or you only want to hear about, Bodacia, the Victorious, or any of that stuff I'm not into. Conversely, if you're only into vintage and I talk about a niche fragrance, don't get offended. I'm gonna go all over the place when it comes to the perfume world. That's something that I've learned. Never discount anything. In fact, some of these old perfumes is where I found the absolute best bang for your buck, and this is one such discovery. I would say, in the pure spirit of 100% honesty, if I could find a bottle of this, I still don't know if I would go for it, and here's why. To my nose, this is the superior fragrance. Tetra alla Scala. It's richer, it's deeper, it's more animalic, and the florals here are toned down a bit. Here, in Jil Sander Woman 2, the florals are amped up. Okay, so you get more of the carnation and iris and jasmine and lily of the valley and orchid and rose and tuberose. You get a very narcotic tuberose in this, by the way. Extremely narcotic. And it really shines. Absolutely shines. This is ball gown territory here. It's absolutely beautiful. There's a lovely oak moss in the base that you get that I was just loving. And the civet, I like Tetra alla Scala a little bit more because of the fact that the civet is amped up here. So the florals are amped up here. If you made me pick a gender, again, I don't really think there's gender in perfume anymore, but if you made me pick a gender, I would probably say that Jil Sander Woman 2 is more traditionally feminine. And Tetra alla Scala, while it's a feminine targeted perfume, is easier for a guy to pull off, I would say. But this is still my preference, but they're in the same sandbox, as I said earlier. They're not a million miles apart. The florals are amped up here. The civet is amped up here. This is also a little bit louder. This is a little bit more refined, but you do get that opium, I just got a sniff of that opium amber feel, and that makes sense because opium came out in the late 70s, 77, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Jean-Louis Suizac created opium, and it was one of the most popular fragrances it is one of the most popular fragrances of all time. So it does make sense that they would incorporate something so popular into a release in 1983. And I think earlier I said Man 2 was an 83 release. I believe it's an 82 release, so I apologize. But, you know, these type of scents, if it wasn't for the kindness of the community, you know, connections I've made, friends I've made, there's no way that I would have gotten to try something like this. I don't know anyone who sells this. In fact, I looked up a bottle online, and the only bottle I could find was like a 5 ml mini, and they wanted like $80 or something for it. And so, you know, these type of scents are hard to come by. That's why it's such a blessing and a joy when I get to smell it. And I'll tell you what, this scent DNA, which I would put in the ballpark of Teatro alla Scala, I thought this was unique. I don't think I've ever smelled anything like this until I smelled this. This feels like the grandmother, if you will, or the mother of Teatro alla Scala. You know, and it's interesting how these perfumers kind of play off of each other. And if you don't know the history, if you don't study the past and understand what came before, you know, you won't really know where the good value is. You might buy $1,000 Boadicea, the Victorious perfume, and think it's the best thing since sliced bread, when all the perfumer is doing is rehashing something from 30 or 40 years ago and slapping $1,000 price tag on it, right? So that's one of the reasons I like studying these perfumes. And I kind of try to make like a mental photograph of the perfume. I try to remember. That's why my favorite way to test perfume is to give it a full wear. A full wear is really the best way to understand it. Wearing it for a couple hours before bed is still better than just spraying it on a blotter, right? But giving it a full wear, wearing it on other parts of your body than just one spray on your wrist, you know, it's that's the best way to me to really understand how a perfume develops. The other thing is that this has both castoreum and civet, so there is a little bit of dirtiness to it, but it's very refined. It's so well hidden underneath the florals. The dirtiness almost comes across as more indolic from the jasmine and tuberose and lily of the valley, which are very indolic scents. If you don't know what indoles are, look them up and do some research on them. They tend to smell fecal-like, which somebody who doesn't understand perfume would instantly say, why in the world would you want that in your fragrance, right? And different people perceive indoles differently in their fragrance is the thing. The story behind the very strong indolic white flowers have to do with the fact that scientists think bees cannot see a white flower very well because they're colorblind. So if you look at some of these flowers, the reason that they're so bright and they're, you know, they have all these different patterns on them is they're almost like a landing strip for a bee. A bee sees that and, you know, they're blinking, hey, pollinate me, bee, pollinate me. And the white flowers don't have that, right? So what they do is they amp the smell up, or they amp the indoles up in the strength of the smell of the flower to really send that signal to the bee to cut through the clutter, since they're white and they're almost like, you know, bees can't see the white flowers as well. That's the hypotheses that scientists go off of, why white florals are so strong. Tuberose and jasmine are two of the strongest florals that you can get. And if they're not done well, they will overtake the perfume and they will give you a headache. And you've heard that old song and dance before with jasmine, you know. For me, it's Samsara. If I wear Samsara and, you know, it catches me on the wrong day, the jasmine in the Samsara just hits me right here, you know. And so, but this has so many different aspects. It's so well made. And it's funny that you know, this is a fragrance that I wasn't even on my radar. I had to look these two up. And there's another one that he sent me from 1981 called Man Pure from Jil Sander, excuse me, not Jil Sanders, Jil Sander. And, you know, that is supposed to smell like nothing else as well. So this house has some real gems. On the previous video where I talked about Man 2, I showed off the Feeling Man, which is the only Jil Sander fragrance I was able to procure a full bottle of. It's kind of a unicorn right now. It almost smells like Dracar Noir with amped up like this raspberry fruity type note, and then in the base is this huge extra oak moss that you get in it over Dracar Noir. Even the vintage bottle of Dracar Noir, which I love, which I like Dracar Noir, but I love Jil Sander Feeling Man. There's just something about it. There's also tobacco in it. So they had some amazing fragrances in the 80s and early 90s. And if you ever come across a bottle of Woman 2 and you took the plunge and got Teatro alla Scala, there were multiple people that got this based on my first impression video that came back and said it was absolutely amazing. They're buying backup bottles. I have 2 backup bottles on the way from Anuj. Thank you, Anuj. And you know, so if you're into this type of fragrance, if you ever see this Jil Sander Woman 2, put it on your to sniff list, or just give it a blind buy if it's not too expensive. I haven't been able to really find any full bottles that I would trust buying. You know, I'll check with Enchante and stuff like that, but being it's discontinued and long gone, it might be kind of one of those you have to put on your list and just kind of keep your eyes peeled, see if it ever comes out. It also, I should mention that as part of the multifaceted approach, there was another popular perfume for women that came out in the 70s called Chanel No. 19. And Chanel No. 19 came out 1 year before Coco Chanel's death. And it's this beautiful green chiffre, which was popular in the 1970s amongst women's perfumes. One of my favorite green fragrances of all time. It's actually number 19. I have a vintage EDT, and it's the reason I never bought Synthetic Jungle, because I just love number 19 too much. I'd rather just wear number 19, to be honest with you. But the reason I bring that up is because this has this galbanum in the opening that, while it's not, nothing is number 19 galbanum to me. That's the ultimate green galbanum, hands down. No argument. I won't hear any arguments on it. That's that. But this has a beautiful galbanum note that's not even listed. It's not even listed in Parfumo. You know, there is something called green notes, but to my nose, the green notes is that popular galbanum from the 1970s in Woman 2. And it's done so well. The blend, expertly done. The materials smell of the highest quality. And that's the thing. Nowadays, you get a designer. The materials don't smell of the highest quality. It smells like a synthetic mess. It smells like crap. And then they, you know, put out a flanker 6 months, or if they even wait a year to put out a flanker. You know, so Woman 2 is awesome fragrance. I loved getting to know it. I really appreciate your generosity in sending it to me, my friend. And I just wanted to make this video, even though I didn't have too much insight in it, just because of the fact that I never hear anything about it. If I didn't know anything about it, my guess is 99.9% of the fragrance community doesn't know this exists. And so, you know, if even 1 or 2 people stumble across this and it helps them, or even if some up-and-coming fragrance lovers stumble across this and, you know, they put it on the to-watch list, to keep an eye out for list, then I feel like I'm at least doing my job of informing the fragrance community on some of these long-lost gems. So I appreciate you watching my first impression of Jil Sander Woman 2. It's the first time I've released a night video in, I think, about a week. And so thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great evening, and I'll see you again tomorrow with another fragrance video. Bye-bye.